All right, today we're gonna build on what we learned on last week with multiplying and dividing integers, except today we're gonna look at rational numbers. I'm gonna give you about 2 minutes to get this definition of a rational number. About 2 minutes. All right, you may still be writing, and that's fine. It tells us a rational number is any number that can be expressed as the quotient of two integers. And what that means is as a fraction. I then gave us an example of different rational numbers. Those are any fractions that we see, any whole numbers that we see. I can also include integers, which are the opposites of whole numbers, or in other words, positive and negative numbers. And of course, terminating decimals and repeating decimals that we learned on last week. Those are all examples of rational numbers. All right, everybody got what you need?
I'm still writing.
All right, let me know when you're ready.
I'm finished.
All right, and as I stated earlier, we're gonna be looking at multiplying and dividing with rational numbers. First thing first, we will have the same rules as we had with multiplying and dividing with integers. If we have the same signs, the answer will be positive. If we have different signs, the answer will be negative. That's the same thing we learned on last week. We also said we can count the number of negatives. If we have an odd number, the answer would be negative, and if we have an even number, the answer would be positive. All right, this piece at the bottom is things that you should recall from fractions in lower grades. If not, that's fine. The first one tells us to make sure before we start to do any operations that we change those mixed numbers to improper fractions. It also tells us to not forget to simplify fractions. So that means after we get an answer in the end, we still have to simplify that fraction. I gave us a notion to remember how to multiply decimals. Multiply as normal. We will count the number of digits after the decimal and place that many in the product. And then for division of decimals, we will shift the decimal in the divisor to make a whole number. We'll shift the same number in the dividend. And then, of course, we would divide as normal. Do we somewhat remember that from 5th and 6th grade? Multiplying, dividing with fractions and decimals. Good. All right, so the first example we're going to look at. It says Alicia, Emma, and Nick dive into an extremely deep pool. Alicia dives to a position of -9.4 yards relative to the surface of the water. Emma dives to a position twice as deep. Nick dives to a position 2/3 as deep as Alicia. What are Emma's and Nick's positions relative to the surface of the water? All right, fellas, help me out. What are some key words that they gave us in this scenario?
Alicia dives to a position of -9.4 yards.
All right, we got Alicia. What did they tell us about Emma?
She dies as a position.
She dives twice as deep.
All right, Emma is twice as deep, and then what did they tell us about Nick?
Nick died 2/3 past Alicia.
Good job, he's 2/3 because Alicia. So we only got one number for Alicia, and then they want us to use that number to help us find the others. So you think that's multiplication or would that be division?
Multiplication.
Good job, that is multiplication. So let's take our -9/4 and we'll look at Emma first. They said Emma is twice as deep. What do I multiply by when they say twice?
2.
2.
Times 2. 2 is a whole number, so how do we make it a fraction?
Put a 1 under it.
And then we'll multiply as normal. What's 9 times 2?
18.
4 times 1?
Oh,
4.
All right, let's simplify that. How many groups of 4 can I take out of 18?
4.
4. 4 times 4 is 16. Subtract that from 18, we get what?
2.
Good job. 4 and 2/4, and 2/4 simplifies to a half. All right, now let me ask you, would that 4 1/2 be positive or would it be negative?
Negative.
Hey,
Got one negative, so that means our product would be negative. Good job. So Emma is -4 1/2 feet. All right, they said Nick was 2/3 as deep. So we still got our -9/4, and now they say 2/3. 9 times 2, we already figured out was 18. What's 4 times 3?
well,
How many groups of 12 can I take out of 18?
1.
why?
Subtract.
6.
So 6 12s and 6 12s can be simplified to what?
1/2.
Will that be positive? Will it be negative?
It's negative.
Negative.
That is negative. So we got Emma will be -4 1/2 feet. Yards, and then Nick will be -1 1/2 yards. Any questions about it, fellas?
No, ma'am.
All righty. All right, this one deals with decimals. It says the volume of water in Pete's pool is changing by -0.05 gallons per hour due to a leak. They asked how many hours would it take for the volume of water in the pool to change by a total of -0.3 gallons. So it's changing this much by hour, and then they gave us our total, and we're looking for the number of hours. Would you say that's multiplication or would that be division?
Multiplication.
All right, now reread it. They gave us how much is changing every hour, and then they gave us our total. And we need to figure out the hours. That is division. So that will be 0.3 because that is the total. So it will go on the inside and it's divided by 0.05. All right, division of decimals told us that we would shift. So if we shift 2 on the outside, we will have to shift 2 on the inside. So now we have 5 as the divisor and 30 as the dividend. And what is 30 divided by 5?
6.
All right, both of our values were negative. So would that 6 be positive or would it be negative?
Negative.
Positive. Positive.
All right, same sign is positive. So that 6 will be positive. And notice they asked us for amount of hours. Can I have a negative amount of hours?
No.
No. So that's one indicator that'll help you determine if that sign should be positive or if it should be negative. But since both of these numbers are negative, we know the answer should be positive. Good job, fellas. Any questions about it? All right, it says, Lily records the change in her dog's weight over 4 weeks. What is the dog's average weekly weight change? What keyword sticks out in this problem?
I want to know the average.
Good job. And how do we find an average?
Add up all of them and divide.
And then divide.
Right? Add all, divide by total. All right. What do you notice about these fractions? Do they have the same denominators or different denominators?
Same.
Yeah, they got the same denominator. So let's look at the negative first. We got 3, 5, and 1. Since all of them are negative, we can just add the numerator. What's 3 plus 5 plus 1?
9.
So that would be negative 9/16. And we still got added to 1/16. All right, do they have different signs or the same signs?
Different.
All right, so we're going to subtract. What is 9 minus 1?
8.
8. 9 is the largest. If it's negative, that means it's 8/16 will also be what?
Negative.
So we have negative 8/16, which will now be divided by our total. What was our total?
5, 6.
4.
Total numbers do we have?
9.
How many total numbers do we have?
4.
4.
Update video because it's a collab with
Four is the whole number, so we could do what with it?
Put a 1 as the denominator.
Now, how do we divide with fractions?
KCF.
All right, now total last week, the number of that KFC. Make sure we know that means take the reciprocal. You won't see KCF on that test, so make sure we know that it's called the reciprocal. So now we have negative 8/16 being multiplied by 1/4. 8 times 1 and somebody tell us 16 times 4.
8.
8.
60.
Will it be positive or will it be negative?
Negative.
All right, 8/64. Does it have anything in common?
It could be simplified.
By divide by what?
8.
8 to 60.
All right, 8 divided by 8.
1.
1.
4 divided by 8.
8.
8.
So our answer is negative 1/8. Any questions about it? All right, good job, fellas. You all looking good this morning. So I take it we have remembered how to multiply and divide. All right, I'm gonna give you about a minute to have a look at this problem. I'm gonna go ahead and read it. It says, Mitch is cutting wood to make a garden marker. Each garden marker changes the length of the piece of wood by negative 0.8 foot. They say the length of the wood changes by a total of negative 4 4/5 feet after Mitch cuts all the garden markers. How many pieces of wood did Mitch cut? All right, fellas, what's some keywords and information?
Each changes the
Change by the total.
total. Yeah.
Ooh.
So we got a total, we got a smaller amount. Would you say that multiplication or would that be division?
Division.
Good job, that is division. So we will be dividing negative 4 4/5 being divided by negative 0.8. Now in lower grades, you probably have learned we can't perform operations like that because they're in two different forms. So do we want to change the decimal to a fraction or do we want to change that fraction to a decimal?
Fraction to a decimal.
A fraction to a decimal.
Somebody help us out. What's 4/5 as a decimal?
0.8.
0.8.
So now we got negative 4.8 being divided by negative 0.8. All right, division told us if we shift in the divisor, we also have to shift on the inside. So now we have negative 48 being divided by negative 8. What would that be?
6.
Would that 6 be positive or would it be negative?
-6.
Negative 6.
Negative positive.
All right, I hear positive, I hear negative. Somebody talk to us and tell us the difference.
It's gonna be negative because one feels like
Yeah, because both of them negative.
Good job. Both of them are negative, so yes, it would be a positive 6. Good job. Good job, fellas. Any questions about it?
No, man.
And one thing I always tell my 7th graders, if we struggle with fractions, we just gonna change to a decimal and that makes it easier to easily put that in the calculator. So we're not gonna let fractions scare us and say, ooh, we can't do it. We'll find a way to make it happen. All right, I'm gonna give you about a minute to have a look at this problem. See if you can figure it out. All right, it reads, the amount of shore at a local beach changes an average of negative 3/4 foot each year. What is the change in the amount of shore after 7 years? What are we doing, Phil?
Finding the average.
How you doing that?
Multiply. Then divide. No, add, then divide.
Are you sure we're? And they told us it changes an average of negative 3/4 foot each year. So they gave us an average. And then they asked us how much after 7 years. All right, will it be multiplication or will it be division?
Division.
All right, let's reread it.
Multiplication.
We got this amount, negative 3/4 for 1 year. And now they want us to figure out for 7 years. You sure that's still division?
That multiplication.
Yes, that is multiplication. Multiplication. So if you need to do a small model to help you discern between multiplication and division, definitely do that. So that would be negative 3/4 being multiplied by 7. 7 is a whole number, so what would we do with it?
Put a 1 under it.
Good job. Now let's multiply. 3 times 7 and 4 times 1.
21.
Oh,
All right, that's an improper fraction. How many groups of 4 can we get out of 21?
5.
5.
5 times 4.
10,
Subtract that from 21.
1.
Good job. 5 and a 4. Would that 5 and a 4 be positive or would it be negative?
Negative.
Good job. Now notice in the end, I kind of always go back and circle my negative values. So if you need to do that in your problem to help you determine if it be positive or negative, please do so. All right. They told us that Rashad chose C. How do you think she ended up with negative 3/28?
She did negative 3/4 times 1/7.
Good job. She did negative 3/4 times 1/7. Or in other words, she started out as negative 3/4 being divided by 7. So that's how she ended up changing it to 1/7. Good job, William. I think that was you or Jacob, one of you. Any questions about it, fellas?
No, man.
All right, I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to a minute. All right, it says the average of a group of numbers is negative 0.75. So they want to know which of these statements must be true. They found an average and found that it was negative 0.75. You don't want to have an idea of what you think must be true.
I think C, the sum of the what you call is gonna be negative.
All right, the sum must be negative. So then when he divided by a positive, we got a negative number. That's possible. Well, hang on to that one. A said there must be 4 numbers in the group. Can we identify how many numbers was in the group?
3.
Did they tell us 3?
No, they didn't tell us.
They didn't tell us what was in that group. So no, we don't know what's in the group. Well, we don't know how many numbers in the group. All right, B said all the numbers in the group must be negative. So if we get a negative answer, do that mean all the values had to be negative?
No.
No. Some could have been positive. All right, and then D said the sum of the numbers in the group had to be positive. So if the sum was positive and then we divided by a positive number, would that answer be negative?
Yeah.
So I found the average, I added it up and divided by a positive number. That answer would be negative?
No.
Okay, yes, that's a no. Somebody said yes earlier. That would be a no. So D would not be it. C is the correct answer. So when they give you different problems like this, just think about what you know about multiplying and dividing with negative numbers. Any questions about it?
No, ma'am.
All right, I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to a minute. All right, it says, a clogged bathtub drains at a constant rate. The amount of water in the bathtub changes by negative 3.75 gallons in 1 hour. What is the change in the amount of water in the bathtub after 1/3 of an hour? Would you say multiplication or would you say division?
Division.
Division.
We got change in an hour. And what was the change in the bathtub after 1/3 of an hour?
0.3 and then keep repeating.
I'm still waiting because I doubt that's a division problem. It's multiplying with fractions, which change it into division. So that's a negative 3.75 being multiplied by 1/3. All right, now humans tried to change that 1/3 to a decimal, and we recognize that it's what kind of decimal?
A repeated decimal.
Repeating. So when we get repeating decimals, we need to have a look at the other side because we can't write that 1/3 because it repeats. So that 3.75, what would that be as a fraction?
3 and 3/4. 3 and 3/4.
So now we got negative 3 and 3/4 being multiplied by 1/3. All right, so we can change that negative 3 and 3/4 to an improper fraction. 3 times 4.
12,
12.
15.
13,
So negative 15/4 being multiplied by 1/3. All right, multiply it out.
yep, 10,
12. 12.
How many groups of 12 can we take out of 15?
1,
1. Subtract.
3.
All right, what does 3 12s have in common?
Is equal to
1/4.
1,
3.
1 and a 4, would it be positive or would it be negative?
negative.
We got a negative, so it will be negative. And we should know quarter, so a fourth of a quarter is negative 1.25. So when you're determining multiplication or division, if they tell us something for one of something and we're looking for another of the same amount, that will be multiplication. So definitely make sure we can tell the difference between multiplying and dividing. Any questions about it? All right, let me know when you're ready, William.
I'm finished.
I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to a minute to have a look. Read it carefully and reread it if you need to. All right, it reads. Frank, Leah, and Tom play a trivia game. Frank's score is -2. Leah's score is 3/4 of Frank's score. Tom's score is 2/3 of Leah's score. And we want to figure out Tom's score. What will we need to do first? Remember I said anytime we stuck on figuring out what we need to do, let's go and pick out some key information. So we got Frank at -2. They said Leah is 3/4 of Frank. And then they said Tom is 2/3 of Leah. Right now, who is the only one we have a score for?
Frank.
Who can we help find Frank's score? Can we find Leah or can we find Tom from Frank's score?
Leah.
Good job. They said Leah is 3/4 of Frank, of the key word that means multiplication. 2 is a whole number, put it over 1. Somebody help us to multiply it out.
6/4.
6/4.
Positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative.
We're gonna leave it as a fraction for now. So now that we have Leah's score, we can now find whose score.
Tom.
Good job. They said Tom is 2/3 of Leah. So Leah was negative 6/4. Tom is 2/3. All right, somebody help us to multiply.
6 times 2 is 12, and 4 times 3 is 12.
All right. Anytime I get a number as the numerator and denominator, it's simplified to what?
1.
1 because it's a whole.
Good job, it's a whole. Would that whole be positive or would it be negative?
Positive.
Check that problem we did. Will it be positive or will it be negative?
Negative, negative.
Yeah. So definitely make sure we go back and double check to be certain. So Tom will have a score of -1. Any questions about it, fellas?
No.
All right, so this morning, we build on multiplying and dividing and changed into multiplying and dividing with fractions and decimals. So far, you all did very well this morning. You will have 3 questions tonight like normal, and I just hope you do the same thing you did in class. Give it a try.